This is a picture of Dachau, one of the concentration camps over in Germany from World War II. So if any of you have heard of the Holocaust, this is where it took place. Right here, you see these little pads. That's where some of the barracks existed before they tore them down. So let me go back to the initial picture. When you get to Dachau, this is the old administration building. So this is where the officers hung out and did all of their work, which has now been transformed into a museum. So when you go through this museum, it really gives you an overview of everything that occurred at Dachau during the war. And I will tell you that Dachau was known as one of the worst concentration camps. In this museum, you will see a bunch of different topics, but one that is always a hard one to visit is the experimentations that they conducted during World War II. So, example, one of them, they had a series of pictures of this man, and if you Google Holocaust Experiments, this is one of the more common ones that will come up with your feed. There was a man who was sitting there. They took a picture and he's looking awake. And then as the series goes on, what they were doing was an altitude experiment. And so took a picture, turned up the altitude, took another picture, turned up the altitude. So what they were trying to do was see how high the human body could go altitude-wise before the body passes out, basically dies on itself. So he starts looking more tired, and then the last picture, he's passed out in the picture. And so you see these kinds of things, and it's absolutely devastating. I will tell you, you walk out of a concentration camp the first time you've ever seen one, and you're overwhelmed. You're just trying to process what you just saw and what really just happened. I'll tell you guys, I was never a history buff until I started traveling the world. And when you see these things firsthand, it's like you make a connection with them and you're like, wow, this isn't just something I'm reading in a book. This actually happened. So when you go that extra step to make history real and personalize it, it really does make a difference. So here's another example. One of my friends on this trip was originally from South Africa, and she knew like 6 different languages. So we were going through the museum here, and one of the signs was a quote from a prisoner, and the prisoner said, "The highlight of each day is going out to the yard," and this is the yard, "and finding a rock that is brighter than the one I found the day before." And so my girlfriends and I all looked at each other. We said, let's go out to the yard and let's find a rock. Let's go find the brightest rock we can find. And I remember picking up a rock, and I remember sitting right over here facing this museum. And we were all holding our little rock and just being like, can you imagine what they went through? It's just crazy. So in all of your concentration camps, you also had, the shower rooms where water didn't necessarily come out. Sometimes it was gas, which everyone in there would perish. You also had your crematories, which would diminish any proof that they had with, how many bodies, how many people actually passed there. So this one I visited back in 1997. My dream was always to go to Auschwitz. So back over in 2001, I finally got to Auschwitz. And Auschwitz is located in Poland. So we took a train from Berlin, Germany, down to Warsaw, which is the capital of Poland. And then we had to take a smaller train up to the area where Auschwitz is. And Auschwitz was also known as one of the harsher concentration camps. Auschwitz is next to Birkenau. They kind of go hand in hand with each other when you're talking about concentration camps, but they're just, it's probably because they're a few miles away from each other. But I'll tell you, we went into, there's a lot of Eastern European influence in Poland. And so we took the train into the station and there weren't very many people around at all. And I remember like trying to find out where we go in order to get to this concentration camp. And there weren't many signs. There was not like your typical tour guide standing out, hey, we're going to take you over to the Auschwitz, anybody looking to go to Birkenau kind of thing. So it took us a few hours to figure out how to get from the train station to the concentration camp. And we ended up walking a couple of miles to get there. And so this is the main entrance to Auschwitz. And when we went in and we went on the tour and all of that stuff, we were behind this family, and they all had their Jewish hats on, so you knew that they were Jewish. And I just remember kind of following them around the whole time because we were in the tour group, like right behind them. And we all ended up at the end in the crematory together. And I looked at my husband and I looked at them. I said, Casey, I wonder if they had any relatives who died in like crematory, like they were turned to ashes in this actual room. Because again, you personalize it and you're just like, oh my gosh, can you imagine? So seeing Casey's reaction to the concentration camp, he reacted a lot like I did after my first time going through Dachau. And so it was really neat for me to be reminded about the initial shock and processing of everything. It's just so sad, and but it's real. So if you guys ever get a chance to go to a concentration camp, I would highly recommend it. I just think that it's such a neat part of history. I won't say neat as in good. So anyway, I thought I'd share that with you guys today. And let me, so you guys